Firstly, just like to acknowledge that I'm working on the land of the Widjabul Waible people of the Bundjalung Nation, and just like to pay respects to all the sort of Aboriginal lands that people today are working and living on. We're joined today by Jo Kambourian, one of a fantastic artist from Lismore who's been so active for many, many years here. And also we are joined by Karen, who's doing the closed captioning that you can see down the bottom. So if you do want to turn that on, if you just go down to the bottom of your screen, if you're on a laptop, to the bottom center, and you'll click on there and you'll see closed captions to turn them on. It can actually help to have that, because sometimes people's sound sort of drops in and out. So welcome everybody, welcome Jo, and Claudie's here. So Claudie is managing it from the galleries account here. If she has muted everyone just to keep the sound quality a bit better throughout this. But if you do want to ask Jo a question as we're going through, just wave your hand or just put up a message down the bottom in the chat box to ask to be unmuted, and Claudia will unmute you. So welcome and enjoy the Quick Draw Club with Jo. We'll move across to Jo so everyone can stop looking at my ugly mug.
Look at mine instead.
Jo.
Well, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us. We're going to do some drawing with shapes and silhouettes today. So I'm going to sort of take you on a bit of a journey of my practice and the things that I'm kind of interested in, how I work, and then do a bit of an exercise in making a similar kind of work together. So there were materials there. So if, at the very least, if you have some coloured paper, some white paper, some scissors and a glue stick, you should be able to join in. There are other things you can use for these techniques, and I'll kind of take you through that as we go during the workshop. So I think, first of all, it would probably be nice if you guys would like to kind of have a little bit of a tour of the studio, and I'll show you some of my works. And then I've also got some examples as well of things that you might like that will be inspiring for you in thinking about creating your own work in this technique and this style. So let me see here. I'm going to pick up my phone and I'm going to just put it off. So hopefully you can all see me. And I might just turn it around so you can get a bit of a look. So this is our space, as me in the mirror. This is our space downstairs. It's kind of a garage studio. I'm lucky enough to have a studio in town as well that I work out of. But this is kind of where I do a lot of screen printing, and we also have litho press here, and a little screen print jig set up on the top of that. Important stuff like screen printing ink, and a little etching press here lives here. Sometimes the car lives here, not when I have my way, but so this is where I work. This is home and workspace for the last couple of months. So lots of planned draws, because I'm a paper artist. Obviously you need places to store all that stuff. So what I'll do is I'll start to take you through some of these works. It's getting a bit dark up this end, but hopefully you can see what's going on the table here. So my main, I guess, practice is I'm a printmaker and I work with paper. And that kind of goes across a lot of different things too. So, for example, screen prints here, relief prints, liner prints. I do a lot of collage, so that's kind of the drawing technique we'll look at today. And I also work with digital prints as well. So, it's very clear. Like when we're talking, when I'm talking about, using shapes and silhouettes to create images, you can see very, very instantly in my work how this kind of plays out. I'm really interested in the shape of things. I'm not big on detail. I really like shadows. I'm not sure why that is. I've still got to work that out. But there's something suggestive about the shapes of things that is very interesting to me. And geometry as well has always been something I've been fascinated by. And so, like, for example, you know, these works here are digital works, which have then been screen printed onto, and you can see, you know, these silhouette shapes that I create. Sometimes I draw them, and then I'll, you know, cut out stencils, or I'll shoot those stencils to screen and use them in my work. Again, with shapes and colour and form, I'm using the cut paper that has been screen printed to create the works. More geometric shapes and more silhouettes down here. So that just gives you a bit of a visual on the work that I make. This is a big digital print, which is not necessarily silhouette based, but again, the shapes. And I think a lot of this comes from my cultural heritage. So being Armenian, geometric patterns and shapes feature a great deal in their craft and their artwork, in the carpets that you see coming out of that region. So that's kind of, I think, part of the fascination. So I'll just cover that up again. And then again, you know, bold, strong colours, contrast in my composition and shapes again. So, and these are some of the more recent things I've been working on, which are laser cut shapes made from a lot of the similar silhouettes that I've been working with, and then I screen print over the top. So a fascination with shape and form and the shadow and silhouettes. So let me see. We'll go back in here. So that was a few bits and pieces, screens that I've been working with. So now Claudie's I'll just put you guys back on the tripod so you can see me and I don't have to carry it around. Sorry about my hand. Let's just tighten that. All right, that's pretty good. So Claudie has a document to share. So if you could do that for me, Claudie, that would be great. And I'll talk you through some of these works. So these are just a bit of inspiration in creating your own collage shape compositions, and some artists that I personally love and get quite inspired by. So I think we might start from the beginning. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening.
Can you see that, Jo? I've shared the screen there.
Yes,
yep.
That's coming up on the spotlight now, yeah.
Great, just let me know when you want to move it along to the next one and I'll do that for you.
Thank you. Okay, well, if you want to, can you start from the beginning? I think that's where we're at the end.
Oh, I think that the Matisse. So I'm just here on number 1.
Is that number
Matisse?
1? Yes, please, yeah.
Can you see that there? I have it here on my screen. No?
Okay. I can only see, and I'm not sure what everyone else can see, but I can only see the last page at the moment.
Okay. Can you see that moving?
No, I can't.
Interesting.
Oh, we found a technology.
I wonder why that's not, because for me, I've got the presentation.
Okay,
now can you
see now? Yes.
Yes,
okay.
Great.
Cool, that's great. Well, so basically, I just wanted to show you a few pictures that kind of talk about using this technique as a drawing technique and as an image making and art making technique. So one of the most kind of, I guess, well-known examples of this, anyway, for me, would be Matisse's Blue Nude. So that was 1952. and it was made from gouache on paper. So literally he would have painted the paper that he was going to cut out, and then he's used scissors. I'm not 100%, but he would have cut this out almost from a full sheet of paper, and then pasted that down on white paper. And that's a beautiful example. His cutouts are amazing. They're very inspiring to me. But it's a beautiful example of creating your work using this drawing technique. I will hopefully be able to share this with you guys after a point, so you can, after the workshop, so you can have a look at some of them, because there's a fantastic exhibition at MoMA in their archives, which is all about the cutouts that Henri Matisse made, and he did quite a few. That was a technique that I think he used extensively. And the URL is there, but we'll provide that PDF, I think, somewhere. I'll share it somewhere. We'll have it so that you guys can have a look at that and check it out. But if you Google Matisse MoMA cutouts, you'll probably find it as well. So that's kind of the first example. And we can move on. Yeah.
Jo, we're also videoing this, so people should be able to, we're recording this, so people should be able to have a look to the recording.
Of course, yeah, fantastic. Okay, good. Well, you can go to the next one. We won't sort of linger too long on this, but it's good to sort of start your creative brains working, thinking about, how you might use this technique yourself in your own work. This is a fantastic work by Cara Walker. It's a cover for the New Yorker she did for, or a paper portrait of the author Toni Morrison last year. And Cara Walker is a really fantastic. She's sort of known as a silhouette artist and uses strong silhouettes cut out of black paper in a very traditional silhouette style to talk about racial issues in America, and usually historic racial issues that also are quite contemporary. And she's fantastic to have a look at if you want to later on. She's probably one of my most favourite and inspiring artists, and has been for a long time. So we can go to the next one. All right, cool. I have to read some of these. All right, this is an artist called Philippa Ridderford, and it's actually a digital artwork. So the idea of using paper cutouts can always be something where you can plan works that you might do in another way later on. So it could be something that you might drawing with the cutout paper. You might then take it to a painting, or you might reproduce it digitally. And she does some fantastic, interesting works that have got the style, to me anyway, of a cutout or a collage. And it's also using shapes in suggestive ways, but they're not necessarily descriptive or real. It's not realism. It's definitely abstract, and it's suggestive of imagery and form, but not necessarily describing that. So we can go to the next one. Have you got that, Claudie? Ah, cool. Well, this is a paper collage by a French artist, and so he's just used cut paper in the shape of the hand, obviously, and used different colours to define different areas of that. So when we're talking silhouettes and shapes and things like that, then obviously that doesn't just have to be a black plain silhouette, but you can add in different shapes to suggest different different places of the hand. You can see the palm lines, the thumb, the finger, the nail, those sort of things. And it's what it is when we're using a technique like this, and I think how I use it is about simplification. There's something really soothing about sort of taking and simplifying an image into something that's quite graphic. And because I have a background as a graphic designer, that is definitely something that I return to over and over again. So all of these artists, we could probably go to the next one and just kind of go through them. I don't need to necessarily talk too much about them all. You're probably all dying to do something. All the artists kind of use elements and principles of design to create these cutout works. So in the instance of doing like a paper collage using shapes, you'll be using elements of design such as shape, space and colour, and possibly texture. And then you're going to use those shapes and the space and colour elements to create your work using pattern and contrast, emphasis, balance, proportion and scale, harmony, rhythm and movement. So these are all things that as you're working, these are all the things that will come into play and the things that you will utilise to create your composition from your shapes and your colours. So we can keep going through. Let's have a flick through some more of these images. This is a beautiful one. So this is Carla McRae. She's a designer and an artist in Melbourne. And these are just gouache sketches of houseplants, but again, using the shape and colour and cropping them, and so scale, you know, proportion and emphasis to create those the suggestions of houseplants, but not necessarily the definition or the representation of those things. I think they're particularly beautiful and quite simple. And go to the next one. Okay, so this is a Jelle, I can't say his name very well. It's a Dutch artist, Jelle Kampen, who uses silhouettes very similar to the way I use them, over the top of digital images. There's something about masking out images and the negative and the positive space that starts to happen that are just intriguing. So that's the technique that I really like. Go to the next one. You can go to the next one, Claudie.
Sorry, it's a bit slow. I am on the next one, but for some reason, it's a little bit slow showing up. Is that there now?
There we go, yeah. So we'll just go through them. You guys will be able to have a look at this on YouTube in more detail later if you want to. These are some beautiful screen prints using paper stencils. So you can see that, like a printmaking practice, shapes, geometry and colour can be really useful to plan out things before you actually go and shoot a whole lot of screens or make a lot of stencils and waste a lot of ink. So it's a really good way to kind of play with images that you might then reproduce in another way. So you can keep going. All right, fantastic. And there's another screen printer. Although I think these are just collages that he's done. And like, as you can see, it's colour, it's form, and I guess, you know, the lines that he's got, you know, create a bit of a pattern and a bit of texture over the top. They don't have, you know, when you're doing collage compositions like this, they don't have to be complex. They can be really simple, and that simple combination of colour and shape can be really effective in creating images and I guess, you know, drawing with shape. So that's what we're going to do. I think that's the last one, is it, Claudie? Almost certain. Oh no, wait, one more. Oh, fantastic. This is one of my favourite Armenian artists that I would be working with actually this month if I had been able to get to Armenia during this time. But obviously everything's locked down and I can't fly. I'm not there, so I'm here with you guys instead. But that's a fantastic one. It's just acrylic on paper. And again, you know, this is the drawing technique that I'm going to show you is just such a fantastic way of being able to compose images and work on ideas that then might go a bit further, as with this one where he's done this as a painting essentially. So I think that's the last one. Yeah, there's me. Excellent. All right. So I've got my iPad set up. Hopefully that's all working. I'll just test that and just go across and see. So if you like, Claudia, you could spotlight the iPad and that will show everybody my desk. Yeah, great. Thank you. I'll just click it.
We can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Now you can.
Oh, okay, good. I'll try and make sure that I can speak loudly. There we go. All right, good. So the first step to the process that I'm going to take you through today is thinking first about what sort of, you know, image you might create. So, you know, as I said, you might have you have your basic kit, you have a pair of scissors, you might have you have a pencil, you'll have your glue stick, and you've got maybe coloured paper, hopefully coloured paper, different sorts of paper you can use, absolutely anything. I use a lot of things that I've screen printed. I've got, you know, scraps of paper here that I've collected, old screen prints. I've got some metallic paper. I've already cut out things of these, so I'm just sort of showing you some of the bits and pieces that I use. Screen printed paper, you can color, you know, color in things. There's like a Posca pen, and then I've got the I think that's gouache. I'm pretty sure that's gouache watered down. And obviously, you know, like coloured cardstock and things like that you can buy fairly inexpensively from Kmart or, you know, your local art supply store, or $2 shop, or, you know, whatever you've got to hand will be fantastic. You can also do things like create patterns on paper to create some of these with. So with those kind of elements that we've got, the first thing that I would do before I start anything like this is I would do a few thumbnails. So you're thinking about what you want to create. So you might locate a scene in your environment. You know, it could be the plant, your house plant, like we saw with Carla McRae. It could be a nice still life that you set up. It could be anything. Could be a silhouette, or, you know, figures. Pretty much anything. So you kind of want to think about all of those things before you start off. And the way that I do that is I usually draw thumbnails. I'm just going to take you through my sketchbook because that's always fun. That's another voyeuristic thing of looking through people's sketchbooks. I really enjoy that. So you might too. And I kind of store ideas in my sketchbook. So always a good way to do it. And so these are, and I'll just hold this up so that you can see, these are some thumbnails that I've created earlier that are kind of things that I might create using cutouts. And you can see, like, I've just kind of, you know, freestyled it a bit. I do them quite quickly. I don't sort of think too hard. Some of them are, you know, are things, you know, in my, you know, well, loosely. A lot of these come from my imagination because that's kind of how I work. So, you know, loosely, you know, the bowl of fruit, carpet, you know, carpet patterns. I always like eyes and things, so I seem to include the eye in things. Just shapes, you know, flowers, organic shapes, archways, patterns again. So I've kind of done that. So what you might want to do is, on a scrap piece of paper, just draw a little a little box that's, you know, roughly the size of your paper. I'm using A4 paper. If I was doing it in my sketchbook, you know, and as a work, I might, you know, do a square because it's a square. And then you just want to do a little sketch of what it might be, shapes that you might like to include. And I've got a leaf that's sort of pressed up against the window here in my studio that I'm looking at, that's just out there. So I would, you know, I would think, okay, maybe I want to do something like that, and then I would just kind of sketch it out and draw it, cropping bits off. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, just in the center of your page. It's really up to you how you design your composition. And your sketches don't have to be anything fantastic. They're just there to kind of help you decide what sort of shape you want to create, what sort of elements that you're going to need to create to make your collage out of. So that's a good place to start. And I collect, a lot of time I collect things as well. So I don't just do it sort of freestyle. And you can cut out shapes and freestyle it. Or, you know, if you're like me and you like sort of to combine elements, and particularly like the silhouette of things, you can also use reference images. So for example, you know, I've got this snake and I've printed this out, and on the back I've just shaded it with I think that's a 4B nice soft lead pencil. And so then when I turn it around and put it on, you know, say some of my cards, probably won't work very well in red, and I draw over the top of the image, I'll just move that up so you can see it, then that will create an impression underneath that I'll be able to trace around. It didn't work very well on the red paper. You're not going to be able to see that. I'll do it on the white paper so you can see. Just a great way to transfer reference images. If you want to do that and you want something a bit more defined and a bit more less, you know, not as loose as something freestyle or hand drawn, you can use this technique, and that will, I'll do it again so that you can see how that comes out. So you can create that image onto your paper, and then you'll cut it out. And I do a lot of that work. So this is a drawing that I've done, and that was one that I'd drawn just from life, and then shaded it, and I've used it quite a few times in multiple things. You probably saw in my diary there. Tracing paper is a great way to do that, to get images and shapes and things that you want as well. So those are some techniques that you can use. So let me see, what are we going to do next? All right. So you've got your thumbnail, you've kind of gotten an idea of what you might create, and I might just choose one of these to do so that you can kind of see how that works. And I might just choose something quite freehand, maybe this one, so I can kind of take you through the process with something that is just kind of using what you've got and creating the shapes with your scissors. There are other ways of creating these shapes, especially if you're using something, for example, like the snake. You want a bit more precision, and that would be quite difficult. Well, you could do it, but I find it would be quite difficult with scissors. So what I would use then is a Stanley knife or a scalpel. This is a scalpel to cut that out. So I'll show you. Here's some that I created before. So if you can see, where's my snake? So I had traced the snake onto my pink cardstock, and then I used the scalpel to cut that out. So that's something you can do. Look at that fantastic shadow that creates. Oh, that's pretty special. So that's a way you can do it. But you can also use coloured paper and tear. If that's the sort of effect that you're going for, you can create shapes by just tearing the paper as well, and create forms and shapes that way. So it kind of just depends on what your composition, what you're imagining you might create, and it depends on what sort of style and what you want to communicate with that. And so obviously more loose organic things will be less descriptive, but then something like this is quite representational. Even though there's no detail and it's a silhouette, you have more representation. It's not as abstract as, say, using cut or torn paper, but you can definitely do that too. You don't have to use representation. You can just use geometric shapes, and basically whatever you can imagine to do. So I'll just put that away, and I'll get to start. So you've got your thumbnail. You kind of got an idea of what you want to create. When I'm ready to make something, I might do a few of these, rough on kind of scrap paper or not so good paper. But then when I create the final composition, I will use some really nice paper, and I've just got some nice printmaking paper here that I'm going to use to create this one today. So, and you might just have some A4, even just A4 paper from your printer will do fine. Card is kind of good. Perhaps better sometimes, like a heavier weight paper is sometimes good because you're gluing onto it and you don't want it to buckle. But in terms of this exercise, it really doesn't matter at all what you use. You can totally use whatever you've got at hand, because it really is. It's a drawing process, but it's a way of working out ideas, and it's something that can be precious, and you can kind of work, fiddle with it and make it really beautiful. But it can be something where you can generate a lot of images really quickly to create studies for work that you might do later. So let's see what we've got here. What colour do I want to use? I might get the pink, because that's really bright. I just love pink. Anyone who knows me knows that. I have this obsession with pink. I don't know why. I'm not a girly girl in any way, shape or form. So you've got your paper that you're going to glue onto, and that kind of will just sit at the side for the moment. If you've got a pencil, I usually use a mechanical pencil, because I don't have to worry about sharpening it, and it's nice and precise. And then you've got your paper that you want to use for your shapes and your cutouts. This one's a bit textured, and I really like the smooth side, so I'm just going to work with that. So I'll draw on the back of the paper so that the side of the paper with the shape hasn't got lead pencil on it, which is totally fine if it does, if you do it on the front, but then you just want to erase some of those pencil marks. The other thing is too, that think about the way that you do it. So for example, this snake is going to be reversed. So if I do something on one side, when then I go to glue it down, it will be reversed. So keep that in mind when you're drawing your images up as well. All right, so pressure's on. I'm drawing in front of you all. This is great. Let's see. So I was going to do, I'm just going to work with this image actually that I started, because it's simple and I can just show you the process. I think with this, I might create the leaves and perhaps the stem separately, but I might just draw it up all on the same colour first, and then see where I go. So what I'll do is I'll just start sketching that on. I don't know if you can see this actually, so let's use a stronger pencil. Yeah, it's a bit hard. And then I'm just going to draw up my shapes. very loosely from life with a lot of imagination going into this. Oh. All right, let's see. Oh, I'm not too sure about this leaf up here. Maybe that'll just be a whole one going up like that. That's probably better. And then I'll grab my scissors and I'm just going to cut this out. So this is, hopefully you're all following along. If it's going too fast for you, that's all right, because you'll be able to revisit this video later and take your time a bit with it. So literally just cutting my shapes out. And because this is A4, this should fit. I think my paper is actually a bit smaller than A4, and this is bigger than A4, that it will kind of line up, but I'll have to do some trimming later on, which is absolutely fine. So do a bit of correction as I go with the scissors. And with images, so if you wanted to do paper cuts, so you wanted to have anything more detailed, you can absolutely do that. But then to be able to cut shapes out of these areas, you would probably need a scalpel or a Stanley knife to do that. But we're working with what we've got right now, so we won't have to worry. We won't worry about that too much. So I'll just cut these guys out. That needs a bit more cutting. So you can see it's hard to get into the smaller areas with your scissors. But that's worked. Now, as I mentioned before, I might want some of these leaves to be different colours. I might want the stem to be a different colour. I'm going to introduce some other elements. But just to start off with, I'm just going to cut this out. And there's it's a very reflective process where, as you saw before, I might spend a lot of time cutting out various elements that I'll play with later, that I'm really sort of interested in the shapes of things. Like this is one that you probably saw in the works earlier. So that's something that shape, there's something about that plant shape in particular. And I did sort of use a reference image for that one. It just sort of fascinates me when you take out all the detail and you just have these fantastic shapes. It's really hard to see the metallic, but it's kind of cool. Shapes could be simple as that. I've got little bowl shapes. So I kind of I just sort of cut a lot of these shapes out just to see what they do. And I might not glue them down, for ages. I just sort of keep them in my little toolbox and then kind of play with those elements. So that's also a way that you guys can kind of play. I always think that the gluing is kind of like the very, 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 very last kind of thing that you do when you're really sure about your composition and the shapes and the elements that you're using. So as you can see, like I just have a whole ton of things like that going on. So I'll keep cutting this out so you can see where I'm at. I'll try and go a bit faster. So it's kind of, you're drawing with shapes in a way to kind of get an idea, to create work rather than, having, I love drawing and I'm not the best. No, not that I can't do it. I just haven't got the patience or the attention span, I think, sometimes to sit down and do something really detailed and realistic. And shapes and colour and form and pattern are really things that get me excited. So that's where, you know, that's where I kind of focus my practice. And that's the beautiful thing about this, is that you don't have to be a fantastic drawer to be able to create some beautiful and strong imagery and work, you know, pieces of work. I might, look, I'm just going to cut this off actually, because I kind of like that shape as it's going now without that top bit. And that, you can see that's going to be cut off, and I might do something with that. So I'm going to turn it around so you don't see my pencil lines. And I kind of like, oh, and I'm getting pencil all over my nice white paper. This is printmaker. So you can kind of see then you've got something that's really contrasty underneath as well. So you can kind of see where you might make a revision to the shape. I think I'd like to round these edges a bit more. I'm not sure about the point. And kind of get an idea of, you know, where that might be on the page. It's kind of interesting so far. So that's, and I won't cut it off just yet because I'm, you know, I might want to move it around. Clearly I can't, you know, bring that over there because this is cut off by my drawing. But I might want to, you know, I might want to move it around. So I'm not going to trim any of these pieces yet. Like I said, I'm just going to collect all of these bits and pieces. And I like the idea of this central stem maybe being a different colour. So let's introduce the red maybe into that now. And the way I'm going to do that is by find the texture side, turn it over so it's all the same side. I'm just literally going to trace around now the image that I've already done, so that I know. I probably should do it right in the centre, so I'm going to waste this bit of paper, but anyway. So I'll just trace around this so that I've got that shape that fits with these leaves that I've drawn. Just do that up there. That should do it. And I might give a bit demo with the scalpel. It's really hard to see my line there for you guys, probably on that screen. Yeah, it's that red. Anyway, so I'll give you a demo with the scalpel as well. And casting a shadow, so it's really hard to see. I think I've gotten to that point in my life where I need to get my eyes tested because nighttime is a lot harder than daytime. And we'll do our best. So I'm just cutting out these bits that I can see, and then I'm going to just think about how that's going to interact with the leaves. So cut that off. I might just do this here so you can see that. That one's cut. Okay, great. So I've cut that out there. And what I might do now is I might just take, where's those leaves? I might just take off those leaves off the pink stem. And see how they're looking on that red, which is pretty cool. I'll just do this one. It's quite fine. And the next one, I might, because I kind of want a little bit of that pink to overlap in the stem, probably not that much. That's a bit too fine to put down. Where's that one go? That one's going. Now I'm confused. That's it. Great. That will go down there. Let's trim this guy off. Kind of want some of that pink to interact with the stem. And when you're doing this, the idea too is not to have too much overlapping as well, because the more paper that you're sticking over the top of another piece of paper, the more you're going to get ridges, and the height of that work will be slightly different areas. I mean, it's, you know, it also depends on the weight of paper you use. Because I'm using the card, I kind of want these to be slightly seamless in that they'll kind of go together like a jigsaw puzzle. So I'm just going to trace around this one, and then I'm going to trace around here. That way I know where I need to finish cutting for this particular work. That's going to be tricky, but we'll do it. We'll just see what happens. All right, so I've got that in there. So now I can finish cutting this out. That's where the leaf's going to go down there. I mean, it's not going to be perfect. And again, that's the idea of doing this. It's a way of making, of creating, you know, of getting your ideas on, you know, down, so that then you can work with them. Like active, I call it active. Well, all drawing is active thinking, really. Thinking with your hands, thinking with your pencil, your pen, your knives. As my dad used to say, taking a line for a walk. So that's what we're doing. So there I've got my stem. I'll just put that aside. I lost the lid, so I don't want to stab myself. All right. So you can, you know, start to play with these bits and pieces. I'll cut that off in a minute. Very much like a jigsaw, but I've got to remember where these all go, so we'll figure that out. It's like, oh no. This one should go, I think that goes there. And then this one is going, pretty sure that one's going there. Can't remember. Anyway. Like I said, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and I've never been very good at jigsaw puzzles, so there you go. I think that one could probably go up there. Let's see, this guy. Yeah, this is it. Sort of, she says, not convinced. Let's just make that fit. That's not going to work. Let me just cut that off. And we'll put it underneath. There we go. Everyone's happy there. So that's kind of coming together. Kind of not. So I'm going to have to move that over. But it really is about playing with these things, playing with these elements, playing with shapes, finding a way to bring that all together. You know, I might not like that, and I might decide that it's terrible and I have to do it again, which is generally the way I work anyway. So many iterations. So that's kind of coming together all right. That's looking good. Now I cut some metallic shapes earlier, and I might start to introduce them into this work now. They're not doing it for me, so I won't do that. Let's have a look at this. Bringing this behind. Oh, come on. It's not quite what I want. I'm going to go back. Let's go back to our original thumbnail. Where are we going? What do we want to do with this? And I haven't really done much else in that thumbnail, so it's kind of a bit lost. So what I might introduce is maybe some extra leaf shapes with another colour that might give a bit of contrast. So all the while you're doing this, you're thinking about, you know, are you making a pattern out of your shapes? Are you using contrast or emphasis? Is it about balance? Is it proportion, scale? Is it abstract? Is there colour harmony? Is there colour contrast? And you're kind of thinking about all those things, but actively doing, not necessarily thinking about it, but playing with it and seeing what kind of happens. So wonder, let me see if I introduce this leaf. I might create this one. So I've got to remember to turn it over so it's the right way around. And then I'll trace around this guy. And use my scissors to cut it out and then see how that. So I hope you guys are all kind of able to follow along and, you know, cutting and playing and creating your own little compositions while we're going. Or you're just watching me fumble around, that's cool too. And saving it for later when you've got, you know, you can concentrate. I think a lot of art making is very much about kind of, you know, doing it quietly, having a bit of, you know, you time where you're able to kind of go into a bit of a meditation and feel what you're doing. You know, you're thinking about it, but it's also a feeling thing too, I think. So I kind of like that. I kind of like that contrast. I like those three colours together. It's kind of happening for me. So, and I kind of think I need something up here. So it's a really, again, you see how we're kind of drawing, but we're drawing with the colours, with the shapes and the imagery, rather than you know, with a pencil or a pen or a paintbrush or whatever. So I'd like something up here. So I think, and this is a really good way to do it too. So if you had some tracing paper and you wanted something to fit in perfectly with the space, or you know, you wanted to kind of create that, you put your tracing paper down and you might do something like this, so that you've got the shape that you want in particular to fit in there. And then you do what I was explaining before. You turn that over. Sorry guys, I got low battery message. I'm back now. Hopefully you can hear me. So we just, if you can see, can't see that. Yeah, I'll just move it up. And I'm just shading over that line that I drew. It's kind of like instant carbon paper. And it's a technique I use a lot in my work, and I have for a very long time. It's a quick way. I often draw things over and over and over again. So it's a great way to kind of refine dwell and shapes. So then I'll stick it. Oh, I'm not going to put it there. Sorry. I want to put it on here. And I want it to be on that side. So I am going to do it on this side. If I get some, you know, lead pencil on there, I can just erase it off. But I want to make sure it's the right way up, because if I did it on the other side and then flipped it over, it would be the opposite way. So let's show you this. And it helps to have a nice, like, sharp pencil, which is why I use the mechanical pencil. So just trace around that. Oh. And I should have my image there. It's quite faint. Don't know if you can see that. Anyway, it's strong enough that you'll be able to, you know, I'll be able to see you. If you're doing that, you'll be able to see your impression. And then you can just cut that out. One thing about this technique is that, you know, you can use this in such a variety of ways to create other works from it. So they're works on their own, but, you know, you can create compositions that you might paint later on. You might create compositions that you'll digitize, maybe create patterns from them. You could print fabric. The ways of incorporating this into your work are endless. So that guy, oh, come on you, fit there. So that's kind of starting to create a bit of composition. There's more that I'd like to do with this, but for the purposes of demonstrating to you guys today, that was probably good. Let me just see, how are we going for time, everybody? Oh, are you there? Yeah.
So Jo, we're at 6 o'clock. We've got until 6:30. So I thought maybe we could see if there's anybody who wants to ask any questions about what you've done or your practice or any kind of tips. So if there's anybody who might like to ask a question, I'll just put the gallery view on here so I can see. And you know, you can you want to ask Ruth?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
So, can I show you what I did? I love it. I totally love it.
Yeah, let me just.
I sort of
I'll spotlight you. I'll just spotlight you, Ruth. Here we go.
Yeah, I'll show you. I'll take my laptop and I hope you can see this. It's not glued down. Can you see this?
Oh, I can. Oh, fantastic. I'm going to just swipe.
Can you see that? Not really. Can you?
Yeah, we can see. That's great.
And it's just, I mean, I haven't planned or anything. I just worked with shapes. And then I had this, you know, different pattern paper. And so I really love it. It's, as you say, it's very relaxing. And I wanted to ask you about printing. Do you ever do any courses regarding screen printing or other types of printing? Hello? Hello? Can't hear you. Hello?
There we go.
I couldn't hear you anymore.
Yeah.
Do you do anything concerning printing, or I'd love to do something?
Yes, well, I'm hoping that once this, you know, once things are settled down a bit and we're able to be, you know, in groups a bit more, that I'll be able to start working, because I do have a studio at Silver Cloud in Lismore, and I was actually just moving in there when this all happened, and I did intend to do some screen printing classes there out of there, and perhaps some other printmaking techniques as well. But because this all sort of happened, I just didn't have obviously couldn't kind of go through with all of those ideas. But hopefully, like later in the year, and definitely with screen printing towards summer, because you're washing up screens and it's messy and it's wet. Summer's such a better time to do that. But yes, most definitely.
Thanks.
My pleasure. Thank you. It looks fantastic too.
It's
awesome.
fun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great way to just make, create ideas and start playing with things before you actually commit to a larger work, or and it generates work, because you make something, you're like, oh, that's really interesting, and then it kind of takes you on its own journey.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Does anybody else have any questions they'd like to ask, or comments they'd like to make, or want to show us if they've been working on something while the video's been happening?
Hi.
Hi, Zoe.
Hey, I'm here with my friend Ronnie, and thank you so much. It's so nice to hang out at home and to have this just space to do creative stuff. And I've been sitting here remarking to my friend how nice it is to witness the chucking out of ideas as part of the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just remembering that you go through lots of not liking what's happening to find what you like, and that the process is the meditation. And yeah, just loving that. So thank you. Just wanted to say that.
That's a really good point too, isn't it? Because you can't, you can't figure it out unless you start. And sometimes you're going down here like, oh, this is not working for me. I'm going to go this way. But you have to be led by the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, I'm just going to I'm just going to spotlight me so that I can say a big thank you to you. I'm not sure how to do that. Anyway, thank you, Jo. It's been a real pleasure to have you on and to see your studio, to see a glimpse into your world. And I've always been a big fan of your work ever since you did the work at Lismore Regional Gallery with Audrey for the duo. It's so beautiful. You've got such an interesting perspective on art and making, and there's it's very beautiful what you make. So thank you for being part of the quick draw online.
Oh, thank you, everybody. It's been wonderful to be a part of it, and I appreciate you coming and hanging out with me for the hour and making. I'd really love to see if anyone's doing this and continuing. Don't forget to glue it all down. But I mean, we all know how to use a glue stick, so that's cool. But I'd love to see what you guys make. So I'm sure maybe on the event you could post your pictures on Facebook to show me what you've created. I'd really love to see it.
That's fantastic. And thank you also to Karen, who is doing the closed captions for us. Really appreciate that. We will, we've been recording this, so we'll pop the video up on our gallery YouTube station channel, and put a link on the website, the gallery website. And also just to say that when all this COVID-19 isolation is finished, we're going to continue to do this program in the gallery. So Jo, we'll ask you to come back and do something in the flesh with us. That would be really great.
So nice to be around people. Yeah, it's definitely a lot more fun. Like, it's been great to do this, and we're lucky we have the technology. But yes, it would be really nice to be able to hang out with you all and have a bit of a play. It'd be great.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you for all the participants on here tonight. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks so much for putting this on. Thank you, Jo.
Pleasure.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.